Good morning, everybody. Please use your headphones because I will speak in my mother tongue, in Greek. Kalimera σας.
Good morning once again. My name is Dimitri Papadimoulis. I'm a Vice President of the European Parliament and a member of the Syriza Party from Greece. I am also a member of the Steering Committee of the Progressive Caucus. And I'd like to thank you very much for having come here this morning. Today is a very symbolic day. It is the Europe Day, and it's the anniversary of the fight against fascism. But Europe today is not popular because it's not offering its citizens what they would like, and we can see from all the surveys, Eurobarometer, etc., that European citizens believe that democracy is not working in the European Union. 13% of French people who voted the day before yesterday at the second round of their elections, unfortunately Emmanuel Macron emerged victorious from that, have shown that Europe is not going in the right direction. So if we want to base ourselves on the symbolism of today, we have to say that people don't like Europe as it is today. It's not offering the social welfare state, jobs and so on, growth, respect for the environment. It's not giving European answers to the migrant problem on the basis of the respect of humanitarian rules and solidarity. And it's giving a space to the far right. Inequalities are increasing, not just unemployment, but social exclusion. The rich are becoming richer, the poor are becoming poorer, and pressure is being put on the middle classes. We have here with us Mrs. Joly from the Greens, Mr. Ortasun and myself, but there are other members of our committee, European members of the European Parliament, and we, although we come from different political families, have a lot in common, and our objective is to try to combat the forces of destruction and retrogression, populism, xenophobia, and social inequality. Our objective is not just to criticize. Our objective is to actually put forward proposals and find common solutions so that we can have a more developed Europe from an economic, social and democratic point of view. And this positive plan for Europe emphasizes solidarity, and it's for people, for citizens. What we see in the joint text, therefore, is shared by all the members of the Steering Committee of the Progressive Caucus. After me, Mrs. Joly will take the floor, and George Pirinski. And afterwards, we will be at your disposal in order to answer any questions from yourselves, journalists. Before I give the floor to Eva, I would just like to say that these proposals, which you find in the text, aim at becoming a basis for joint action in our countries, and our Progressive Caucus wants to act as a catalyst so that we can have integration between our political families, not only at European level but at national level. Our text presents proposals and 5 pillars: growth with social justice and employment for all. Because you cannot have sustainable growth when you have inequalities at national and regional level. We ask for more democracy in the European institutions. People need to be able to know and control over decisions that are made, but Europe shouldn't decide without them. Otherwise, Europe is not going to go forward. We also want a different economic governance, which will not continue with the dogma from Schäuble for more austerity, but will rather regulate the sector and have more development, have more growth in policies so that we can go forward, and also combat fiscal tax evasion. And now we have the Trump governance, and we want to therefore even more so combat this kind of thing. We want a strong role for Europe. We want a balanced foreign policy, and we want to also combat the arms race and have peace and cooperation. Well, I now thank you for your attention, and I give the floor to Mrs. Joly.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Demetrius. So here we are today to present the sixth scenario, the missing scenario from Mr. Juncker's proposals from the beginning of March. We want a different Europe, a Europe that is focused on the citizen and where citizens are at the center of power. To do this, we first of all want a change to the austerity policies towards environmental transition. We want major investment to meet the climate change challenge and the shortage of resources. We need to ensure the security of all, and so we need a radical change in our methods of production and consumption. That is why we want a green transition plan that is fit for the challenges we face. This requires significant investment to allow for this transition. Next, we want to make the European institutions more democratic by revising the treaties. The procedures need to be more democratic. Everybody feels this is particularly important when it comes to the important decisions being taken by the Eurogroup and which are not subject to any control, for instance. We must move away from this rule of unanimity. We need to move away from these mutual vetoes that stop any progress. There are too many obstacles and blockages. To do this, we need a real constitutional process to establish the separation of powers and to consolidate the fundamental rights and freedoms, and will define the EU's objectives both within and outside its borders. It is no longer acceptable today, for instance, to see Hungary and Poland violating fundamental rights without anything being done about it. We can see that these governments are infringing the liberty of the press. They are controlling financing and freedom of association, and they are seriously undermining fundamental freedoms. Finally, we wish to see a strengthening in the fight against tax evasion and money laundering. The scandals which have struck this mandate are very telling. We've seen LuxLeaks, we've seen Panama Papers. It's very unlikely that despite the laws that the Parliament has passed on anti-money laundering, that money will continue to leave the European Union to hide in tax havens. We thus need more tax justice. We want less corruption. This needs ambitious reform, starting with country-by-country reporting. You'll be aware that this is a directive that's currently under discussion. We have a Commission proposal which does not go far enough. The Parliament must improve it. Country-by-country reporting must cover all businesses with over 40 million in turnover. And we must have a series of criteria for all European countries, but also countries outside the EU and the world. In the current proposal, only EU countries and tax havens are identified. The rest are all grouped together. We would like a true country-by-country reporting system, and we are working on this matter. We hope that we will be able to reach a majority on this question in the Parliament. Next, LuxLeaks and Panama Papers showed the importance of protecting whistleblowers. The paradox is obvious. Whistleblowers have been tried in courts, whereas those who are behind tax avoidance and tax evasion have get off scot-free. So we need protection of whistleblowers. And the Commission has begun work on this. They have started an impact analysis and have promised that by the end of the year we will have a text ready. Finally, we are working on the common consolidated tax basis. We hope that we will manage this, even if it will be done in 2 stages. Finally, this will lead us to a single tax rate. So that's what the Progressive Caucus is suggesting. That's what we want to propose and the changes that we want to bring to make Europe a Europe of citizens. And now I'll give the floor.
Thank you very much, Dimitrios. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Georgi Pirinsky. I'm from the Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats. I'm one of the participants in the steering committee of the Progressive Caucus. And I would like to just add a couple of words before you have the opportunity to ask questions. By the way, there are other colleagues of ours here, Eli Schein, Kostadinka Kuneva, Ernest Urtasun, so I guess they are also at your disposal after that. Why a 6th scenario? Because our conviction is that the Commission is in denial. It is not addressing the core challenges that are before the European Union today. What are those? If you would like to look at today's Financial Times editorial having to do a particularly painful restructuring of a company, you will see the true diagnosis. Technology and globalization are creating ever more bigger profits and ever less employment. The profits accumulated are not being invested in productive investments, and therefore you have stagnating wages and hugely growing profits. So what do we propose in our paper? First, you will find the very same diagnosis which I just outlined to you, namely that the Commission leaves untouched fundamental asymmetry between liberal economic and monetary rules and social and tax gross inequities. Therefore, the 6 pillars which my colleagues already described, decent living and working conditions, and I will illustrate each of them with just one highlight. Here we insist on real collective bargaining. Number 2, democratization of the Union, and especially of the Economic and Monetary Union and the way it is being run. Recovery and solidarity, and here we believe that the Euro semester needs fundamental transformation from what it is now. 4, sustainable society, and here note that we insist on a new industrialization policy because there cannot be a sustainable society without the transformations which Eva just touched upon. Regulating globalization, and here we have used the term protective trade policy. It is not protectionist trade policy, but it has to pay full attention to the challenges of preserving and enhancing employment while liberalizing trade. And peace, as Dimitrios pointed out, which means no to nationalism and a much better balance of international relations. Thank you.
Thank you, George. We have some minutes for questions, short questions and short answers. And please, who wants to put a question? Please. Yes.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Nicola Miladinov. A question to Mr. Papadimoulis et une question vers Madame Joly. You proposing another scenario which involves changing or amending the European Union's treaties. And do you believe that these ideas can be realistically implemented, given the quite different position among the governments? You are criticizing the European Commission, but by the end of the day, these are the member states who shall decide the fate of the European Union's future. And Madame Joly, est-ce que vous pouvez...
Could you clarify a bit more about environmental policy? What is not right about it today, in your opinion, when we talk about trade policy and investment? Thank you.
Σας ευχαριστώ για την ερώτηση.
Thank you very much for your question. Thank you for your question. A lot of what we are proposing can happen within the framework of the current treaties. For example, tax harmonization and tackling tax evasion, which allows many member states in the European Union to become paradises, fiscal paradises, is not in the treaty. The treaties themselves should be actually achieving fiscal harmony. And the same goes for freedom of speech and climate change and environmental policies. There are issues which do need to be amended in the treaties, however, and the only way that that can actually happen realistically is for the debate to begin. So that is why we have these 6 pillars in our text. They include direct actions and direct implementation where there is political will, because today we don't have political will. And there are other issues which need to mature through dialogue and through a progressive alliance such as our own. That's the only way this can go forward.
And as for the question that I was asked, the green transition towards renewable energy does require investment that most states can't make today. They are bound by rules on deficit, and it's not that they're not aware that these investments are necessary, but hundreds of thousands of euros of investments and billions make the deficit too big. So we need to make sure that investments that will guarantee our future are counted outside of these deficits. This affects renewable energies. It also concerns the need to have insulation in all buildings so that they consume less energy. It's also about all the necessary modifications and changes to our lifestyle and ways of consumption. This is the broad outline of our project, but it's essential, and that's why I'm saying that we need to move away from austerity and go towards an environmental transition. It's also got the advantage of creating many jobs. These are jobs that cannot be moved abroad or elsewhere, but have to be done here to work on our future. I think the need is there. It also affects agriculture. For our health, we need to reduce glyphosates. We know that the cancer epidemic is correlated to the use of such products. And these are investments that we do need to make to prepare for the future.
We have time for one more question, please.
Thanks. Alexandre Mato, Spanish journalist. Considering that you are a progressive caucus, even though these are alternatives to the White Book of the Commission, I would like to know your opinion regarding the last social pillar that the Commission presented last week, if I'm not mistaken. Do you think that is correct to call it a social pillar or social agenda, considering this lack of concrete proposals regarding social dumping, fighting against labor injustice or unemployment?
Well, clearly this is purely my own assessment. We have not discussed it, so I'm not involving anybody else. But very briefly, the proposals by the Commission fall very short of what is needed to achieve a real change in the social sphere, in the life of people. What is, I guess, something we can welcome is that the issues are on the table. The problems have been mentioned. There is a useful repetition of principles which are on the books and which are not being observed. There are one or two positive steps, I think, let's say in the work-life balance area, where there is a certain movement. But as a whole, by the way, the fact that the Commission engaged in this exercise is a result, I believe, also of efforts by members of Parliament, such as those assembled in the Progressive Caucus. And you remember that in January of this year, Parliament adopted a resolution on the pillar of social rights, which goes much further than what the Commission has come up with. And in that sense, we are quite disappointed, because we called for norms, we called for institutions, and we called for resources, not only for principles.
I'd like to say that I fully endorse what Jörg Pirinski has said. We're working on the Employment Committee. What we're asking for is that this debate, which much delayed but has actually begun, be transformed into specific measures which bind in a specifically set out time frame and are also supported by economic and social funds at European and national level. And on this issue, the European Parliament is ahead of the game vis-à-vis the Commission. And the Progressive Caucus is an incentive. It's the motor for going forward. Because yes, in the Council we do have member states who seem to want Europe à la carte, a two-speed Europe. We have, of course, the big business interests at play, and we therefore have a sort of crab-like movement, one step forward and two step backs. And we need to enhance and strengthen the social pillar of the European Union and find answers to that.
Υπάρχει μία ακόμη.
I would like to take another question if there is one, and I ask the indulgence of the interpreters to... This is the last one.
Thank you. Georg van Herk, I'm a British journalist. Just to ask about Brexit, what your, first of all, each of your initial reaction to Brexit, and also to what extent this is a reaction to Brexit, and how you kind of want to counter that in the future, if that's what you're trying to achieve. Thank you.
Και το Brexit είναι ένα ακόμη.
Brexit is yet another sign of the fact that Europe needs to change. Europe needs to be more attractive for its citizens. That is why we have these initiatives, so that the 27 member states, having heard the warning sign of Brexit, can change so that Europe can become more attractive, more social, more sexy for its citizens and for the younger generations. Now, the steering committee of the Progressive Caucus is not happy that the United Kingdom has chosen this route, but that was its democratic choice. And what we're interested in is that the negotiations leading to the divorce will take place in such a way that they guarantee the rights of the citizens of the European Union who are living in the United Kingdom, and of course will guarantee the citizens of the United Kingdom citizens' rights in other member states of the European Union. Well, if there are no further questions, I'd like to thank you very much on behalf of the steering committee of the Progressive Caucus, and I'd also like to thank colleagues who came here this morning. Thank you.